Well, it wasn't just mainstream Democrats who had a decent night. It was a pretty good primary night for mainstream Republicans, as defined, say, not being so Trumpy, although some of the votes are still being counted. So joining me now to break down more of last night's primaries. Who else but Mr. Kornacki at the big board. You know, Steve, I want to be careful drawing large conclusions here, but it's sort of a general, it did feel as if you're somebody that's keeping score through the prism of Trump, it wasn't Trump's best night, although there's a bigger test coming in a week.
Yeah, I think exactly. And I think what we saw last night in some ways kind of increases the suspense for next week. Let's start in California, because there were two districts in particular where I think what you'd call the Republican establishment, mainstream Republicans, national Republicans, whatever term you want to use, were concerned about their incumbents potentially not getting out of the top two primary last night. So let's take a look at those two districts. Number one is the 40th district here. This is Young Kim, freshman Republican Congresswoman. Now, you notice there's no check mark next to her name yet. NBC has not called this yet, but you do see she's got about a 10-point lead over her closest Republican opponent. Remember, open primary California, Democrats, Republicans, same ballot, top two advance. So this is what Republicans were hoping to see, mainstream Republicans were hoping to see. Greg Rath was the Republican who was trying to rally kind of the pro-Trump right, sneak into that second spot. Looks like he's got a tough, again, we haven't called it, but would be surprising at this point if he takes out Young Kim. So that would be something the mainstream Republicans were very much hoping to see. Here's something else that I think is a little bit more complicated. The other district in California they're worried about, David Valadao, Republican incumbent. Now, he voted to impeach Donald Trump after January 6th last year. Now, there's one Democrat in this race, Rudy Salas, state legislator. He's clearly finishing first. He's through to the general election. This race drew three Republican candidates, and you can see one, Chris Matisse, is closer to Valadao. Again, we've not yet projected that Valadao is actually going to finish second and advance to the general election, although it would be a pretty steep hill for Matisse to climb as the final results come in. But you add up the Matisse and Medeiros votes, and you're ahead of the Valadao count there. So it speaks to a fracturing of the Republican party there in that district from that Valadao vote. And again, this is a very difficult district for Valadao in a general election, because it voted for Joe Biden by 13 points. But I think the surprise last night that I think nobody was quite ready for, and that complicates things heading into next week, is this one in Mississippi, the third district in Mississippi. Almost all the votes are counted now, and an incumbent here, an incumbent Republican, Michael Guest, is still running in second. He's running behind a challenger, Michael Cassidy. Guest voted for the independent January 6th commission. Cassidy made that a major issue in his campaign. It looks like whatever happens with the final votes that are counted here, this is going to go to a runoff. Mississippi's a runoff state. There's a real chance that Guest is going to lose his seat. And the main reason he's going to lose his seat is because of that vote for the January 6th commission. So you say it sets up the suspense for next week in South Carolina. You got Nancy Mason, incumbent, being challenged by Trump-backed Katie Arrington. And then you've got Tom Rice, Republican who voted for impeachment. There's your Trump-backed opponent, Russell Fry, and a few others. So read those tea leaves last night however you want, but I think, we're getting two clear tests next week.
Yeah, no, and Rice feels like we're headed to a runoff. Obviously not a third candidate in the first there, so we shall see. And impeachment may matter more than January 6th, but as you showed in Mississippi. And at some point, Steve, I'm going to make you break this down a bit regionally. It does feel as if Trump does better in the South at times than he does in other parts, but let's see. We got a whole bunch of primaries in August before we can make those claims. Exactly. Mr. Kornacki, as always, sir, thank you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.